Hey, Numa Plus. Happy April. I am out in the wild. What? I'm out in nature. It's a very windy day today. So I apologize in advance if the wind becomes an actual problem for me. But I'm hoping to stay in this stationary place. It's April. April's special because April is my birthday month. I was born in 1987 on April 25th. So later this month on social media, I'm sure I'm probably going to post something celebratory about that. So if you're out there and you see it, jump in on that celebration with me. I wanted to give you guys a couple updates on some things going on in my world. So firstly, there's a pastor in town, a local pastor that I've become friends with. He's deconstructed and leads an affirming church, and anyway, we become friends. And he told me when we had lunch last week that he wants me to be on his staff, which I was surprised by and flattered. And a month prior, I had to work out, someone asked me, would you ever work for a church again? And I was like, oh, I don't know if I would. And my response to him was, to the friend, not this pastor, my response was, I probably would, given the right circumstances, the right conditions, and the right people. But it'd have to be a pretty special church for me to want to jump into that again. And it's possible that this friend I'm talking about could be that. So I don't know what's going to happen there. Regardless, though, I am speaking at that church in May, the third weekend of May, I believe-ish. So if you're going to be in town, in Nashville at that time and want to come hear me speak publicly, I would love to meet you. So just reach out, let me know. I would love to connect you. I'll give you the location and all that. But for this hot take in April, I want to talk to you about something that I think I tried addressing when I first came out, and that was quite the ordeal. I was in a pretty traumatized state, so I think a lot of the things I tried saying back then they were challenging. I think I'm in a better place now to try and communicate some of this. Now, I want to disclaim up front, I'm probably going to come across a lot more extreme than other queer people would about stuff like this. But I want to say this because I don't think it's unique to me. I don't think I'm the only person who feels this way. I might be one of the few people who's audacious enough to say this in the way that I want to say it. But I want to talk about being affirming, especially if you're not queer, right? Being an ally, if you will, to queer people. I've noticed when I watch shows or movies and a queer character comes out to whoever for the first time, my attention gets very acute. I'm dialed in with those moments. I'm very interested to see how the character listening responds for lots of reasons. And I'm actually surprised that many times I will see on liberal media a queer character come out and their supportive character in their life, the person who's affirming or whatever, responds, and their response to me is subpar. I would not consider it affirming or supportive. It's not celebratory or embracing. And I think that they usually try to write in the struggle and the challenge that the character receiving that information is going through. So I understand from a storytelling aspect why that might be, but I'm noticing more often than not, I'm disappointed by how queer characters are received when they come out in film. Still, which is interesting. The other thing I want to add to this in terms of just experiences with this, besides me coming out myself, is I was interviewing somebody for my podcast, and a question came up for me about them, are they affirming of queer people? And I was getting really nervous, and I started feeling a little bit triggered. Did I not do my research? Did I not vet this person appropriately? Did I miss this somehow? I thought they were affirming. Long story short, it turns out they are. I was right, but just the way the conversation was going, it wasn't explicit. And that's something that I think I'm trying to point out is when it's not overtly explicit, when there's any room for doubt or question, that's a traumatizing experience for people like me. And so that actually is the impetus for why I wanted to have my hot take be about this month. I want to say this, and I know it's going to come across extreme for some people, but I want to say this for my sake, but then also for any other queer person who also feels this way. When somebody comes out to you, so whether this has already happened or it's going to happen, let's say some of the people in your life you don't know are queer, but they come out to you at some point. First of all, let me just point out that if they decide to come out to you, that's a huge compliment to you. It means that they care enough about their relationship with you, and or they also feel safe enough in their relationship with you to want to trust you with this information. They don't owe this to you. They don't need to tell you, right? So if they do, take it as immediately up front, take it as a massive compliment. Experience that moment as like an immense regard for you and like a demonstration of trust, because that's literally what's happening. They are making themselves so vulnerable to you. So that's a huge compliment. Congrats. Yay. It's a win. I don't know that a lot of straight people understand like the beauty of what the queer person is saying to them, even if it's not in English, about how they feel and like care about this person, you know? So if that moment happens, when that moment happens, here is something that I am aware, I feel, and I don't know that it's fair. I don't care. And the thing is, I don't think it's unfair. If the person hearing about a queer person, like coming out to them for the first time, is anything less than 100% affirming and celebratory of that person in that moment, I'm going to say this: you have failed. Not you, whoever, like the straight person. Or whoever, the person hearing the queer person come out for the first time, if they're anything less than 100% celebratory and affirming, they have failed. Failed what? Failed the queer person. And there are many factors that go into why I have this opinion and attitude. One of them is like, it's 2023. Like, we are too progressed at this point. There is too much knowledge and information and exposure and progress in the world today for someone to have a queer person come out to them and them still not be unsure. Like, that to me is 100% unacceptable. You arrived at that moment, and when I say you, please just know I'm talking to this person, not you, unless it is you, then I am talking to you. If you are anything less than 100% affirming of the queer person when they come out to you, you have arrived at that moment unprepared, and I would say unqualified. You haven't done your research, you haven't done your work. And I'm like, the queer people in your life deserve that due diligence and preparation before they ever decided to come out to you. Like, that should have happened already. And unfortunately, a lot of people who become allies, the thing that sparks them to do the work and finally start, I'm going to say this in an explicit way to just get my point across. The thing that sparks them to finally give a shit about queer people and their experiences is that somebody in their life that they care about came out to them. And I'm like, hey, that's actually not fair to that queer person and to the rest of us, the queer people in the world. Our humanity and presence in your world should have mattered before one person convinced you this was worth caring about. I think it's a commentary on how detached we are from the collective experience of being human. If it takes someone that you're significantly endeared to care about this. I think the struggle and oppression that queer people have gone through in our culture already should have been enough for all of us to recognize this and clean it up. And the irony is, like, I'm saying this to me too. I wasn't this person. Right? But I'm saying all this from what I've learned and been able to piece together. Here's the deal. I don't think it's appropriate to wait until someone you care about comes out to start caring about this conversation. I don't think that's appropriate. I think that's irresponsible. I think that's ethically negligent. And I don't know if that's getting said enough. And I think a lot of people that I know who are in queer affirming spaces and are doing advocacy work for queer people, they don't say this. I think they would say that I'm extreme. And I will also admit, with my therapist this last week, she told me that I am exhibiting, what's the psychological term? The industry term? Cognitive disruption? Is that the word? Shoot, I don't know if I'm saying this right. She had some kind of term for the way that I view the world or that I'm viewing certain aspects of my experience, that there's black and white and it's extreme on either end, right? And there's not anything in between, which obviously that's not true in everything that I think and do, but like there were certain aspects of what I was sharing that she was like, hey, you're exhibiting, cognitive distortion. I think that's the word. Cognitive distortion, where everything is either always and only this or always and only that. And she's like, that's not real. Like, that's not true. Reality is way more nuanced and complex than that, which I know, right? But then she shared some examples of what I had been talking about in the session. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're right. It might not be true about everything that I think and do, but in these areas that I'm bringing up in this session, I am absolutely doing that. So I could be doing that here. I don't think I am. I think the point though is, listen, some of you here like have done this, and to you I want to say thank you and well done and bravo. Kudos for being a quality human being. Some of you haven't done it yet, right? Like, but I'm also like, what are you doing here if you haven't? Right? Like, why? How are you listening to me still? If that, so I'm, probably preaching to the choir, but I think it's appropriate for us as a community, as allies and the queer community in general, to hold people around us accountable to, it's not okay for you to wait till your queer child shows up shaking and trembling in front of you and trusts you with their precious truth for you to figure out that you should care about this. And then you kind of fumble through that awkward moment because you weren't expecting this, and your kid is not 100% convinced that you are on their team and that you regard their humanity and you will protect them with everything you have and that you love them and that there's nothing wrong with them and you totally see the full aspect of them, of who they are, and that you're going to absolutely celebrate that. Like, if they don't get that in that moment, you missed something. They deserve something from you, And I think I'm saying that to probably also all the people that didn't do that for me, that couldn't be that for me, in relationships that I needed that from. Like, these people cared about me and loved me and knew me for a long time and knew me well and couldn't show up like that for me. And some of them came eventually, but it took a while, and it took me in this process to firstly ever even consider, what if these people are valid, right? Like, and that's, to me, that's a crime. That's unjust. That's not okay. When I see queer characters being met by their friends or family or whoever in shows or movies, and the person's like, oh, here are some examples of something that I would deem less than 100% of being affirming and celebratory. I'm trying to find somewhere to settle. If someone's like, oh, I don't care, that's not affirming, that's not celebratory. That's not an appropriate response to somebody coming out to you. If they're like, I already knew, it's not a big deal, that's not affirming, that's not celebratory. To treat someone coming out to you as a queer person like it's not a big deal is not sending the message you think it's sending. It's sending indifference, apathy. It's sending a dismissal of the struggle and the sacrifice it took for them to get to this point to share this with you. I don't care, it's not a big deal, I already knew is such a dismissive message. It's not okay. That is not celebration, that is not affirmation. Please do not respond to a queer person when they come out to you for the first time like that. Here's some other examples of less than 100%. I love you anyway. I love you anyway. That's not celebratory. It's not affirming. I don't care how you feel. You're still like providing space for, you could tell me how you feel about me and still also disagree with my validity as a human being, my queer identity, and that's not okay, right? So anyway, I'm not going to just go down this huge list of all these things that people shouldn't be saying and doing. I'm trying to give you some examples. Hopefully we're catching some energy here, right? Like a posture, an attitude. Here's what I would propose it should sound like. Not verbatim this, but something in this direction. Someone comes out to you, the response, quickly, somewhere, as soon as you have like an opportunity to respond. I would want for someone to say something to me like, Mike, this is amazing. Do you hear this? Mike, this is amazing. First of all, thank you for telling me. I'm honored that you would trust me with this. I'm honored that you would be willing to be honest and like authentic, because I know this is difficult. I know this is like such a struggle for queer people in our world, and I'm so sorry for what you've had to go through, but thank you for trusting me, and I want you to know right now, 100% immediately, I love that you're gay. I love this. I love who you are. I love that this is true about your life. This is beautiful, and I'm totally here for it. I'm so ready to support and celebrate and champion you. I understand like this is a difficult process, and I want you to know that I'm here for you. Right? This is a celebratory, affirming message. This is what I wish I would have heard. And I heard this from a couple of people, which was so, I'm going to say the word ministering to my soul. It was uncommon. And anyway, but for someone to respond like that is a game changer. Like you'll remember that for the rest of your life. The queer person who receives that kind of a message from you in that moment will remember that for the rest of their life. Probably. It will deeply impact them because it's so not what they experience. There are so many people who like think they gave an affirming or supportive response that was less than celebratory, less than embracing, less than affirming. And I just wanted to step in and say, hey, when that moment happens for whoever of us, if we have anything going on in us that's anything less than 100% celebration and affirmation, we happened upon that moment unprepared. We were not ready. And that person deserves something better from us. We failed them. All of us, So, I think I said it. I just needed to get this out of my body. This matters, like how we treat people, queer people in these moments. It's not just in general, and that there's all this other stuff to talk about when it comes to allyship and support, like that matters, but that coming out moment is a big deal. And they're not getting that back, neither are you. Like, you guys aren't getting that moment back in your relationship. That is a line of demarcation. That is a big deal. And I would love for all of you, all of us, to be prepared. And it's okay if you biffed it with some queer people in your life. There are other queer people coming in your life. Unless you're a hermit and you live on a mountain somewhere and you don't meet new people, then maybe not. But as you keep going through life and you keep making new friends and being exposed to new people and new people enter your story, guess what? Some of those people are going to be queer. And at some point, some of them might be in the closet when they meet you, and they might decide to come out. Some of you might be the reason they finally consider for the first time in their life, I'm going to cry. I think there's a deeper, beautiful aspect of what I'm talking about here. Like, if we do this work ourselves, without needing a queer person's life and vulnerability to be the thing that compels us to do it, if we do this work and then we show up in the world informed and convicted about the beauty and validity of queer people, your attitude, your presence, your energy, the words you express, the things you demonstrate in your life might actually be the first beacon of hope a queer person who's closeted around you experiences, that might give them an idea, anything other than staying in the closet for the rest of their life. Like, oh my God, if this person exists and they believe this and they're seeing like this in my environment, maybe I could come out. Maybe me being this way is okay. There's at least one person in my life that I believe would fight for me, would see me, would care for me, right? And I believe there are so many queer people in the closet right now, to themselves, let alone to everyone else, who might not make it out without people like us who have done this work and are demonstrating that posture and energy and attitude and advocacy. But by us doing that and being that in the world, we actually are creating a safe enough environment around them without realizing it's them, that they would actually take it, they'd reach for that vine and let it pull them from the last thing they were part of into something new, that they could move forward in their life, that they could allow their potential to unfold, they could fill out as the person they're actually supposed to be in this world. That's a gift, And that might not even ever be something you do consciously. In terms of this person, I'm going to say this to them in front of them. You might not even know this. It's just happening, as we just be us, affirming, celebratory, advocates for humans and giving people permission to be different, celebrating the diversity of the complexity of the human experience. As we are those people in the world, we unconsciously give permission to the people who haven't been able to experience that yet. Oh, maybe now it's okay. Maybe now you could be that change agent in someone's life. Whoo! So I guess I'm just saying, I hope we happen upon those moments prepared. I hope that we are ready to dish out. Not a rote copy and paste, conveyor belt reaction to people, but a genuine regard, being able to witness them, that individual in front of me. And your queer identity is something that I love and celebrate and embrace, and I acknowledge and recognize brings a gift and beauty to our lives that we wouldn't have otherwise, that we could show up like that. And then the beautiful byproduct of being those people in the world is we actually unconsciously give permission to the other closeted queer people around us to come out. We send messages hey, it's maybe not as dangerous out here, as scary, as isolating as you might have been told before, or you might have experienced before. I've shown up. Things can be different now. I care about that. I believe in that. I think that matters. That to me feels like, if we're talking ministry and Christianity and theology and gospel, whatever, a ministry of reconciliation, that to me feels valid, relevant, necessary now. Happy April. Thanks for being here, New with Bless. I'm so glad you guys are here. Thanks for hearing me out. I'll see you next time.